So in 1910, around right after Pesach, it must have been somewhere in April, my father gave me, I remember, about 250 kronen and gold ducaten like. And he put it in a little sack around my neck. And I went. So finally I came to Hamburg, and from Hamburg I took a ship and I came to the United States. When I reached, of course, when I didn't know anybody, and I was the youngest in the ship. There was in my class, I happened to be on the tourist class. Not tourist, but there was this between tourist and second class. But there was also a Zwischendeck there, where you had the dormitories where you have 80 people, 100 people in one room. Well, I had a few. At that time, I only paid about $30 for a ticket. So I came to New York. And finally, I wound up in those days in 1910. You still have the Kessel Garden. So we got off in Kessel Garden, and I looked around, and I didn't know anybody. So a fellow came over to me, and he had a kind of a military cap on. At least it looked to me like a military. But it was written, then I saw written in Hebrew. It says Hebrew Aid Society, and in Rusha Tevis, Hayas. And he comes over to me and says, have you anybody taken you up? I says, no, I don't know anybody. Nobody knows me.
What language did he speak to you in?
What?
Did he speak
He
to
spoke
you
to me in Yiddish. And I couldn't imagine. I says,
say it in Yiddish.
He says to me, Jingele. I was short and little, and I was just, Jingele. He says, ich vergessen es, ich sag das in Yiddish, hast du Kräuven, du, wo sie doch kommen abholen? Sag ich, nein, ich kann nicht gehen, du. Sagt er, nu, ich will dich abholen. Sag ich, wer sind dir? Sagt er, ich bin von einer Organisation eigens für jüdische Immigranten.
Now say it in English.
He says, I represent an organization for the Hebrew Immigrant Society that I'm taking care of just people like you who have nobody, and we'll take you into our own. We have a little hotel. We'll take care of you until we find something for you. But I didn't believe him. So I met the purser there. I went over to the purser. I says, tell me, do you know this man? Oh, he says, he's 100%. He's a very nice fellow. He'll take care of you. So he took me downstairs. We came down from the Castle Garden, we came down to, I think it was Bowling Green, it's known. And then we had a horse car. I came and took it by car. We took me down to Grand Street, and from Grand Street down to East Broadway. And when we came into, it was a very nice big hall. There must have been 100 people, men, women, and children, all waiting for somebody to pick them up. So I told him, look, I got some money. I don't have to stay here. He says, yeah, you have money. How much have you got? So I told him, I got 200 kronen. Oh, he says, you have 200 kronen and you don't belong in this organization. You are a rich man. So he took me down to a hotel that was known as Broadway Central. I think it's somewhere on Broadway and 3rd Street. And I stayed there overnight. In the morning, he took me down to a shop where they make pants. He says, you're going to become a pants maker. They make pants and they make skirts. So they put me down near a machine, and he went over to a boss, the employer. He was a Yid mit Burden Payas. He looked more like an immigrant than I did. Well, he didn't want to take me. So this man from the higher says, you'll take him and like him. This is an order. Well, he had no alternative. So he took me down and he put me down near a machine, and he showed me how to step, how to sew on a machine. Before I knew it, it didn't take more than 2 minutes. I had a needle in my finger. I fainted. So they pulled the needle out, and I had to go on. Well, I learned how to step, and I didn't know how to, just a little belt, a little thing, because they used to work in section. There wasn't one man there who was really a mechanic. There were just people like me, but mostly older. I was the baby. And I spoke to them. I speak to strange people. I understood. In my home country, you had to speak German. So they called me the Deutsch. So I spoke German. And they finally decided they'd give me $3 a week. I still had some money. I still had a few gold ducaten. So then they find a room for me. I paid $3 a month. But I slept in a room with another fellow, one of the shop. So we were two people in that room, and we ate in the restaurant. They gave us in the morning. I had a roll and a coffee for 3 cents. And noontime we had a glass of soda water, a piece of herring, and 2 slices of rye bread. This was our mittag, our luncheon. And it wasn't exactly a picnic. So I kept on working until about May, till about June. Then they called out as general strike. Later it was known as the famous 1910 strike, the cloakmaker strike, cloaks and skirts. And so when I came down the next day in the shop, the people there was a picket line. They told me, we are going out on strike, we want to have a little improvement conditions, and you'll have to strike with us. To strike, not to work, it was a pleasure. So I says, go, sure, I'm going to go picketing. So I went in the picket line, but it was all right a week, too, but we had a strike for 20-odd weeks. And my money got short, and I owed my missus, my landlady, I owed about 2 months' rent already, and it was tough. But anyway, they collected some money from the other shops, and they gave us a bagel and a glass of milk every day. And so we midget ourselves. Finally, they were to try to settle the strikes. It was a funny thing that most of the employers then, they were German Yehudim. They came about a generation before us, and they looked down upon us. We were supposed to be, they call us Ostjuden, Eastern Europeans. We were like second-class citizens. And they didn't think that we have to make a nice living. And they were all very wealthy people, you know. They were all members of that temple. What do you call that temple again?
Emmanuel?
Temple Emmanuel. Well, anyway, after about 20-odd weeks, they interested a few of these people to come and try to organize us. I remember one was Mr. Jacob H. Schiff, a very famous and a very fine gentleman. He was also a very great philanthropist. And then there was a fellow, if I remember well, his name was Samuel Untermeyer. There was another fellow, and his name was Louis Marshall, in that type. As a matter of fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt was in our picket line. And they didn't get anywhere. They finally brought down from Boston a gentleman by the name of Louis Dembitz Brandeis. Of course, later he became Supreme Court judge. He became very famous. He was then quite a very important and very prominent lawyer. And he began to work on it, and it didn't take him more than about a week or two, and they organized what they call a protocol. And we finally settled. Well, instead of 59 hours a week, we had a great victory. We worked only 54 hours a week. But when it came to starting to work, my employer says, he was some kind of a landsman. I didn't know him. But he says, the fact that I went on strike with the rest of them, he doesn't want me. So the union insisted, you all have to take him back. He says, I'll strike and I'll close down my shop. He shouldn't go out on strike against me because he knows my grandfather. Anyway, after a week's time, we went on an additional strike. The business manager came over to me and said to me, Sam, I'm sorry, but these are 30 family people, and they've been on strike for almost a half a year. You'll have to leave. Well, under the circumstances, I had no alternative. So I left. I walked around, and it seems I was blackballed or something. No matter where I try to get a job, what is your name, Sam Halbrecht? Have no job for you. Seems they had an association. Well, meanwhile, I got another job somewhere. It was already, I think it was in March or April 1911.